Soup soars out of the animated series and into the DC Universe. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys DC Universe, Superman the Animated Series, Superman. As the planet Krypton was destroyed, scientist Jor-El secured his infant son Kal-El in a rocket that would transport the child to Earth. There, as Clark Kent, he discovered the truth about his interplanetary heritage and, upon reaching adulthood, assumed the identity of Superman, the Man of Steel. In the city of Metropolis, he battles the forces of villainy and continues his quest for truth, justice, and the American way. Before we delve deeper into the looks at Superman, the animated series, of course the first thing we're going to do is figure out just how exactly Superman stands, how tall he stands. Taking my trusty tape measure and putting it to the very top of Superman's head, according to the readouts, looking at right here, 7.2 inches in height is the new animated series Superman. And that in centimeters works out to be 18.2, a little over 18 centimeters tall. Of course, it would make for entertaining value to move the figure over and to bring in the other figure that we had a look at. This is Batman from the animated series. You know, these are decent enough figures, I have to admit. I feel like I might have maybe sold short Superman, or Batman, I should say, when we had a look at him. I will say, though, the figures do have some difficulty standing, resulting a lot of the problems really being the fact that their legs are so skinny. I often have times when I find I'm putting the figures down, their legs just sort of go, Arr! That's already started happening with Batman. It's sort of started happening with Superman. Proportionately, it also seems like they're sharing the exact same body. It looks like the torso, the mid-torso, the legs, and the arms are all identical to one another, with, of course, only a few swap-outs of things like heads and capes. Like with Batman, Superman comes with, of course, a trading card promoting Superman the Animated Series on the front. This is, of course, a good way to kind of do a like for like, a comparison back and forth to how the figure does look to how it was supposed to look in the card. It's pretty close. There are a few things I probably would have changed, but for the most part, I think it looks pretty accurate to the card drawing here of Superman. And then on the back, it tells you that the source material, Superman the Animated Series, which ran on TV, if you could believe it, back in 1996. That's a long time ago. Real name is Kal-El Clark Kent, of course being his adoptive name. He's 6'3", and again, a very modest 235 pounds. Maybe I really don't know what weight actually should translate to. 235 pounds for a guy who's 6'3" and all muscle? Seems like he should be a little bit heavier, but what do I know? Moving that to the side, Superman, of course, also comes included with his same circular display stand that comes included with pretty much all the other figures. The only other figure, as we've discussed already and looked at, is the regular comic version of Superman that came from Action Comics 1000. His stand was clear. All the other figures are black standed figures with one singular peg. And you've got the DC logo imaged on the bottom there. Nothing really to be said for the base. Yes, it's still a magnet for fingerprints. Nothing has changed in that department. We'll just put that right over there. Superman comes also with a bent iron girder, I believe. It's done all in a nice silver paint. Probably actually cast in silver, not simply just painted over top with silver. You can see the rivet points there. Something looks mighty crushed on the side. Sort of feels like something you would expect to get with like the old Kenner animated series of Superman figures. I would have to go back and go through my library catalog of different imagery. Sourcing, of course, I could find it also online. Maybe the actual original figure did come with a girder, and this is, again, just a nice nod to that. Superman also comes with a series of gripping hands, one pair to be exact. The other hands that he has currently in the sockets of his forearms are a pair of closed fists. Begging the question, yes, I know he doesn't come with a flight stand, but why wouldn't you have also given him the flat hands for flight poses? Needless to say, if you are looking to display the Superman in with the actual steel girder in his hand, you simply just take the hand, just like that, and you pry it around. It looks really neat the way they've done it, because it looks like he's actually bending and molding and manipulating the metal. That's a lot of M's. I like that. I like that. I like the look of that. He could have also come with some other things too. I mean, this is the first wave and all, so we're going to kind of overlook the fact that, yes, Superman could have potentially come with other things as well. But that being said, let's have a look at the figure itself. Now, again, looking at this particular figure and looking at the Batman that we already had a look at, I jokingly said at the end of Final Looks in the Batman Animated Series Batman, why did these figures actually have to exist? The idea of getting another nod to the Superman Animated Series, not done by DC Collectibles now, but instead McFarlane Toys. You do get a slightly larger Superman. And proportionately, I suppose he still fits the bill for what Superman looks like in the animated series. Very broad shoulders, very narrow waist, and very skinny, almost chicken-like legs. For his face sculpt, and again, maybe we can cross-reference that to the card that came included with the figure. Yeah, for the card itself, I mean, if you're looking at this to that, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Just due to the way that the head is slightly larger than the neck, one of the unfortunate turnoffs of that is the fact that on the sides he's got these little tufts of hair that stick out. It kind of makes his hair look longer than what it actually is, and it really truthfully isn't long. I mean, if you spin it to the side and then you spin it to the back, it's of the right size, but it's just because you've got these little extra curls that stick out, so I think simply it could fit over top of the ball joint. If only these were a little bit closer together. I wonder if I could take a little bit of hot water and maybe I can bend that closer together, because it seems like it's a softer plastic. Just from the fact that when you are looking at from the front, yeah, you got these little kind of curly cues sticking out from the sides of Soup's face. For a hair, he does have an awfully shiny hair. Probably could have toned that down a little bit, going more favoring, I think, matte than shiny black paint. It does make it awfully reflective, and it kind of a bit of a detractor, unfortunately, from his face sculpt. Okay, let's have a look at the card again to cross-reference that. The mouth is decent enough, the eyes are good, and of course you got the peaked eyebrows on either side. Maybe like the skin tone is a little on the more yellow side. Am I just kind of nitpicking now? I don't mean to be, but I feel like his face is possibly a little on the yellowish side. It's a slightly different shade altogether than the neck down below, which seems a little bit more pink in color. Like, there's definitely a disconnect, I think, from the coloring that they used for his face and then the coloring that they used for the plastic in his neck. Still relying on the fact that this is the same torso piece as Batman. Now that maybe has some reasoning why the Bat logo seemed like it was a separate piece, and possibly why the Superman emblem also remains to be a separate piece. With Superman's, I could justify it because it's obviously raised out, and it looks good having it raised out. Batman's, though, should have easily just been painted in place. Why they actually had that as a separate piece is still beyond me. But the Superman emblem looks decent enough. It's a little messy on the top there, but for the most part it's pretty good. And then, of course, you get down to his lower underoos trunks, complete with his yellow belt running through the looplets there on the sides of his belt, and that's what it looks like on the back of the figure. Spinning the figure around, you've got Superman's cape, which does look a little bit like melted wax. If you've ever had yourself a mini Baby Bell, those things are delicious. Of course, it comes inside a little wax container, a prison, if you will, that holds the cheese inside. Once you pull it out, you take the cheese out, you're obviously going to consume the cheese. There's always the question of what you're going to be doing with the Baby Bell after the fact. People put it in their mouths, I think, when they were growing up, pretending that they had red teeth. Isn't that lovely? Generally, I just kind of squish it and play around with it. And I'm looking at the back of Superman's cape, and it reminds me of the pliable wax that is the former shell for the mini Baby Bell cheese. How's that for a comparison? I don't know why, but it seems to swoop in like the actual cape itself. I keep wanting to manipulate it, feeling like it shouldn't be like this, but it seems like it's been ironed flat at the bottom of his cape. It looks decent enough up here, and I like how it has that natural drape right in the center section, but for some strange reason it gets really flat, really quick, about halfway the point down his cape. It looks a little strange to me. Still not crazy on curled capes. A lot of C's. I would have actually just liked that the cape ran straight down. I guess it's supposed to mimic the fact that maybe the good gush of wind has caught it and it's blowing off to the side. But personally speaking, I would have just liked just a nice straight cape running all the way down. Now, the thing about these figures, though, is, once again, sort of problematic. I mean, just based on their design and their design alone, DC Collectibles has this problem as well. To make it look cartoon accurate, you have to make some sacrifices, and while I don't think McFarlane Toys has the level of sacrifices that DC Collectibles has, because at least they have double hinges on the joints on the knees, because he does have awfully spindly legs compensating for a really large torso on top, it does cause this figure, and I've already got like somewhat loose legs on this Superman. More on this one, not as much on this one. And then he's also got, I have issues with his ankles. His ankles aren't loose, but the way that they've been kind of bowed out on the side, it looks like he's got a big bulge on the side of his ankle there. At least the joints, knock on wood, are pretty stable enough. I don't have issues necessarily with the ankles, more so again on the legs. You put the Superman down, for example, and his legs want to just start doing the splits on you. So yes, most definitely, if you have it available, I mean, after all, they do include them after all. You have no excuse. You can't blame anybody else but yourself if you happen not to display him with the stand. I would most definitely recommend using a display stand when it comes to, of course, displaying Superman here. Let's have a look at this guy's articulation. Now, his head rotates all the way around. It sort of has the same problem as Batman. When you are rotating the head, because the head, let me just tilt it up slightly, the neck naturally angles forward. Because of that, when you've got, of course, the ball joint sitting inside of that and the head sitting on top of that, he doesn't have a natural moving back and forth. When you do ultimately move Superman's head back and forth, you start noticing, oh, that's not good, a big awkward gap in between where his head and his neck should be, especially when you rotate it to the side. I mean, if you turn it this way, you don't see it. If you turn it this way, most definitely you can see this big open gap where it almost just seems like you could store like little trinkets and, I don't know, like little coins and stuff like that inside. It is a bit of a unfortunate that that has to stick out as much as it does. We're not really sure what they could have done differently to it, because other Supermans have been able to pull off this effect in the past, and they've never had real issues in the past where they've had these awkward gaps. It's very obviously noticeable right there. Needless to say, Superman's head moves up, it moves down, it moves right, and it moves left. But all the while you're doing this, you're sort of feeling like you have to quickly compensate it, or you move it too far and then you're realizing, oh, no, I'm just going to move that down a little bit to try your best to hide that noticeable socket. As for the shoulders hinge outward. The cape, as you guess it, doesn't get in the way of things at all. And then he also does have this cup socket joint. That's not the correct term, but that's the term I'm giving it. It allows for additional movement out, where you can move the arms additionally out. Ironically enough, just like the Batman, I think Batman's was on this side too, this socket joint doesn't move out as freely as this one does over here. But you can move the arms forward, you can move the arms back. He swivels at the bicep. He has that hinge in the elbow, which again, I love these elbows because one thing, you've got the elbow looking like this, you know, what a normal elbow should look like. And then when you bend the elbow, bend the arm, you've got a naturally forming elbow. How about that? Yes, you've got the gnarly looking ratcheted joints that are kind of in the way of things, which I kind of wish he could have just done completely away with, because on Superman it's very noticeable. I guess if you're bending it this way, you're probably not going to see it as much. If you turn it this way, oh yeah, there it is right there. Hands rotate all the way around. It hinges up and down. I'm not bothered at all either by the fact that his part of his ball joint right here is all colored in the same blue plastic. If you remember when we looked at the Action Comics 1000 Superman, his issue was the fact that they did use the same blue color on his ball joint, this hinge joint right here, and it did cut off the hand too much. I think it probably should have been a flesh tone. Here on the animated series version of Superman, I think it works perfectly fine. Upper torso ball joint, and Superman has a lower torso ball joint. His legs split out. There you can sort of see how everything comes together and builds this figure. Forward and back on the legs, double hinge happening on the knee. No articulation in the boot itself, but he does have a hinge up and down on the foot. And he's also got toe articulation as well. Of course, you can move those feet outward as well. Decent Superman. He has issues. I mean, we all have issues. I mean, we're not all perfect in life, and Superman is not perfect either. I mean, he may look perfect, but he does have a few little hiccups. So when you actually really start looking at the figure, he does have some bit of an issue standing, and I think a lot of it is just more so just to get once the feet, once you get stable footing happening on the feet, then you shouldn't have too much the issue. But so far, I think if I have any nitpicks to make for the DC Multiverse line, I think most if not all of it sort of sits squarely on the broad shoulders of the animated line. And again, I still ask myself this question. There we go. Still ask myself this question, did this line even need to exist? No, not the Multiverse line of figures, but did the animated figures really, truly need to exist? Oh boy, here we go again with did the animated series need to exist? I am only saying that because, well, as good as these figures are, we already have the DC Collectible figures. I'm not jumping on the DC Collectibles bandwagon and saying that they're better figures than the McFarlane line. I actually feel like it could be the opposite. McFarlane figures feel a little bit more stable, like you could actually do stuff with them. They're certainly more articulated, and while I think the likeness still is something that I would award to the DC Collectibles brand, the Superman and the Batman that we've both had a look at so far from McFarlane Toys, McFarlane is hitting all the marks that you would want to mark off when it comes to decent animated figures. I guess I really need to get away from the whole mindset of does this line need to truly exist? I think where my worry again comes from is not so much the fact that McFarlane Toys is producing animated figures, but if they are going to just be abruptly stopping. You know, again, we're getting the John Stewart Green Lantern. Here we go again. So again, that might be some indicator that we're going to be getting other characters as well. If it was simply just Superman and it simply was just Batman, then maybe I could say that these were one-shot entryways. They're probably going to be doing this moving forward. For every wave, and I'm hoping this is going to lead to more subsequent waves, but I'm guessing for every wave that we're going to be getting, kind of like what Mattel did, we're going to essentially be getting comic run figures, and then thrown in there we're going to be getting probably television-inspired characters, like the Green Arrow that we're going to be having a look at, and they're probably going to be throwing in a couple of animated figures. At the rate that we're going, though, it's probably going to be a while before we're building a league anytime soon, or that we're going to be building any more animated figure collections, both Superman and Batman. Just an FYI, though I don't think McFarlane Toys are watching this video, but I would just say if you're going to be giving us a Superman and a Batman, which I'm for the most part pretty happy with, I hope we also do get some extra characters in there as well. For every Batman, there should be a Joker. For every Superman, there should be a Lex Luthor. And enough villains are in both these characters' rogue gallery that hopefully some of those start making their appearances to regular figures, that we're not simply just getting a Superman and a Batman. Oh, and then of course we're getting a Green Lantern. That sort of is a lead into, of course, what we're going to have a look at next. You probably already have some idea based on what I just said. Yes, the Green Lantern, John Stewart, we're going to be having a look at next, which based on his shoulder articulation, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot to talk about in that review. If you are new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the bell notification and keep your peepers peeled, because there's going to be a whole bunch of new Multiverse figures reviews coming soon to this channel. So there you go. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.